Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to this last session on assessment and knowledge checks as a part of this workshop. Now, yesterday we've talked about synchronous teaching and some tools that can help you in the live sessions. Then we also talked about asynchronous teaching, and we looked at one particular model called flipped classroom. It is a model of blended learning, and we looked at how that model can be executed and how content can be created both in the form of videos and in the form of interactive learning material through some e-learning authoring tools. So like yesterday I said, there is one more e-learning authoring tool called Adobe Captivate. And since today's agenda is to discuss assessment and knowledge check, some tools and strategies. Along with this, we will also discuss a hybrid classroom setup, which might be useful for you in the coming semester. Something which is made using the infrastructure which is existing, it's already there in LHP. We'll discuss that also briefly. So when we say assessment and knowledge check, why we've kept these two items separately is because assessment can mean that there would be some marks associated with this, right? And they would contribute to maybe at the end of the semester, they will contribute to the student's grade. But knowledge check can simply be just like a quick check of whether they understood something correctly or not, some exercise like that. So it may or may not have points associated with it. So both assessment tools and knowledge check tools can be used interchangeably. If you assign marks and you enable reporting, then it would have an effect at the end of the semester. So the first thing we would discuss in today's session are knowledge check tools. So a VR based tool, uh, making VR based assignment or knowledge check assignments on Adobe Captivate. Then we will look at an AR based tool for lab assessment or lab interaction, we can call it. And then we'll see how we can make some fun quizzes or tests on two platforms, quizzes or puzzle.org. So puzzle I've already shared with you yesterday, but this is just a platform to hide a quiz behind the veil of a game, right? So this is not exactly gamification, but just quizzes in the form of games. Then we'll talk about a few strategies that we can use to maintain academic integrity in tests, especially when we are creating quizzes on Google Forms, and how we can go about it. And then we'll talk about the hybrid classroom setup. So the first point being VR virtual reality based assignment on Adobe Captivate. So Storyline 360 and Adobe Captivate today are the hottest e-learning authoring tools, widely used by almost all instructional designers. Almost every training material that you may have seen, not in academia alone, but also like in industry, when there is a onboarding of a new employee or any kind of training software is created, training learning material is created, that is often done using Captivate or Storyline. So we'll talk about Captivate briefly. So it is an e-learning authoring tool, and just like any other authoring tool, you can make video demonstrations on it, you can do screen recording on it, you can make like a presentation kind of a structure, and you can insert quizzes, you can insert interactivity like how we discussed yesterday for Storyline. It's not very obvious like in Storyline, but it is quite simple. So two major things which sort of differentiate Adobe Captivate from other tools are this ability to make VR assignments and a software simulation or assessment. So I will not be discussing software, means I'm not going to show a demo of software simulation today. I'll show you a demo of VR assignment, but software simulation is also a very, very useful tool. What this really means is that suppose you have a software that you want some student, or say for example a staff member, you want some software or some sequence of steps that should be followed, you want a staff member to learn that, right? So what this simulation or assessment or training tool can do is that you can clearly define this is where you should click first, then say there is another field, this is where you should enter some field, then next is this is where you should click, something like that, right? You can define clicks, every click can be defined. And what this software simulation part kind of an assignment, what it will do is it will track every mouse movement and text movement. So when you save it as a simulation and you assign it to a learner in the form of an assessment tool or a training tool, what it will do is it will keep on prompting the person that you should click here. Then person, if the person does not click there, it will give a you can say a message that this is not the correct button. So in this way, you can actually have a live kind of a demonstration of a software simulation where the person's mouse movement is tracked, every single click and every single keyboard stroke is recorded, and in this way you can teach a particular software to another person. Right? So that is what is software simulation. I'm not covering an example of this, but I thought it'll be great if we know what is possible with Adobe Captivate. So today's demonstration is on a virtual reality assignment. And to do such an assignment, to create such an assignment, we need a 360-degree camera. So a 360-degree camera essentially has a fisheye lens. So in one go, it will take a complete 360-degree photograph. Our institute already has 360-degree cameras from Ricoh. And if you would like to issue them ever, you can just contact Office of Academics. So this is how a typical 360-degree photograph would look like. It also has the same format. You can save it in JPEG, just like anything else. It is only when you view it on a normal photo viewer, it will look like this. But on a 360-degree enabled platform, on a 360-degree viewer, it is going to take the shape of a sphere, right? And you can rotate and you can change the view. So this is one such 360-degree photograph that we have taken in our lab. So the objective of the demo that I'm showing you is to create, for instance, a VR-based assignment where we want the student to feel like they are present in the lab. And as they are looking around, I want the student to answer a few questions. For instance, I can insert interactivity just like how we discussed yesterday. But in terms of, say, I want to add a hotspot on some device which is kept in the lab, and I want the student to answer a few questions regarding that device. Or say, for example, in this demo, I've just taken a simple example, like just identify the device. Then I want the student to move to another place in the lab and then again look around. There should be some prompting on the screen, and then student asks another question, and at the end student should know what is their score and whether their individual answers were correct or not, right? So that is the kind of demo we will see now. So when you open Adobe Captivate for the first time, it shows you a bunch of options from which you can choose the kind of project you want to make. You can see there's a blank project from PowerPoint, a video demonstration. This is just like how it would have been on Camtasia or through screen recording. Then there's an option of software simulation. We want to go for a virtual reality project. So I'm going to select virtual reality to create. So you can see that there is a blank slide, and this is essentially a blank 360-degree sphere. And it says we can add a 360-degree image or video here. So we've already captured 3 images from our energy conversion and systems lab, which I've kept on the desktop. So I'm just going to import them. So I want to include the first image, and the 360-degree image has been loaded. And what we want as an example at this point is to ask a question from a student who starts this assignment. What exactly is this equipment? Okay. So here we can add hotspots or interaction. So can also add text. So let me add a little bit of text first. So let me say, answer these questions. And I'm going to change the color, and I can move around this text. So if you notice, as we move around any object on this 360-degree, as we move around any object in this 360-degree sphere, it is moving along the sphere, right? It's not moving linearly. So let this be on the wall here. So now I want to insert a question. So these are all different icons that are present. You can also insert any other image you wish, but let me just use this question mark icon. And I'm going to place this here on this device. And on the right hand side, you can see what all actions should happen when somebody clicks on this hotspot, right? Its name is hotspot 1. On clicking, it says it should go to the next slide. What I want is to add a question here. So I want the student to view this question at least once before moving. So I'm going to check this must view once option. And action wise, it is fine. It needs to go next, but I want a question to be added to this hotspot, right? So two options, multiple choice or true or false. It's checking multiple choice. This means I can add one question. I could have made this 2 in case I wanted to add 2 questions at this point. I'm going to go ahead with 1, and it's a graded question. So there will be marks associated with this question. So we say okay. And you notice on the left-hand side in the slide panel, a quiz slide has been added, right? So a question has been added. You also notice that automatically there is a set of result slide which has been added at the end, right? So this blank slide is basically the environment on which this result slide needs to be augmented. We can add anything to this last slide as well. So we'll come to that in just a moment. This is the question panel. Let me insert a question. Identify this component. Is this a capacitive load or a rheostat? Adding another option. Is this a DC motor generator? Coupled device. So the correct answer is the third one. And these are some options that you see in case the answer is correct, what should be prompted. If the answer is incorrect, what should be prompted, right? These things are also editable if you'd like. I'm going to leave it as it is. So we've set this question here. Another thing for this question was, you can see on the right hand side how many points it carries. So we are saying it carries 10 points. Does it have multiple answers? So these are some question options. So I'm going to leave them as it is. So first question is ready. So going back to the screen, I have attached one question to this hotspot, which is a quiz question. And you notice right now on the screen, it says it is chosen as an exploratory project, right? Not a guided project. That means the user has to go on clicking on certain elements to go ahead. It will not automatically move to the next scene or next part based on some timing. That option is also there. If you want, you can choose a guided version. So since this is an assignment, we are keeping it exploratory. Now what we want is that this is one vantage point from where we are viewing this lab. So we have another 360-degree photograph, which was taken by placing the camera here, somewhere here, right? So what we want is at this point, the student to go to this location. So what we'll do is we'll insert a new slide, a new 360-degree slide, right, at this point. And we'll import that second image here. So this is that second image located near the door. And here I want to add one more question. So we'll again take a hotspot. And let me this time ask if, what is this? So here in the interaction, you can see there is an option, like I said earlier, for including various other images. So you could take an arrow image and save it in a PNG form and load it here, depending on your convenience. I'm choosing a question mark icon directly. So everything remains the same. I want this to be viewed once. I'm adding a question to this, again, a multiple choice question. So it has added another question slide. What type of load is this? Is this a resistive load or a capacitive load? So the answer is resistive load. So I'm not changing anything else in this question. There are other options again, like it carries 10 points. This question also carries 10 points. So this is done. Now what I want is the score, the total score of these first two questions should now get automatically added up and shown in this last screen. But when this screen comes, I want this also to be augmented on this 360-degree environment. So what perhaps can be done at this point is I want the student to exit the lab, right? So I'm going to add one more icon here. say something like this. And I'll also add a supplementary text here and say exit quiz. There is nothing, no question attached to this. I'm also not including it in the quiz. Note that in the previous case regarding this particular hotspot and the one we also added in the beginning, we did not include the score in reporting. Like if we want the overall score to be reported to an LMS, which has to be a SCORM compliant LMS, this option can be selected, include in quiz in the form of a reporting. So this is about it. What do I want when a student clicks on this icon? I want it to go to the next slide, which is a results slide. Fine. So in the results slide, I just need some environment. So we have another third photograph, 360-degree photograph, which is from outside the lab. So it's as if the student has left the lab, right? So I want this result to come in the center of this view by default, somewhere here. How should they know that they need to go to the next screen? I'm going to add a marker here. Sorry, I forgot this before. So let us say to indicate that student should now go to this point, right? We have added one marker and the action attached to this is simply go to next slide. So now the student knows that, okay, when they click on this, they will be taken to the next slide. What happens here? The next slide is the question slide, right? After this, they will be back on this screen and they should click here to go to the next scene, which is this view. Now, when the student comes to this scene, I don't want it to be facing exit. I want it to be facing here. Okay? So in whichever view you want the student to be spawned into in the scene, that is where you leave your project at. And this one we had already set here. Now we go to preview. So it has created this HTML5. And when the student plays this, clicks on play, this is the first scene they see. Now, the student looks around. There is no other interaction, but this question is inviting the student. So when they click here, they see identify this component. This is a DC motor, submit, correct, continue to move forward. And you see there's a check that has come to show that this has been visited once. Next, there's nothing else to do. Let us click here. This should have taken us to the next slide. Here we are, as if we were situated in this vantage point now. Is there anything here? Let us take this question. What type of load is this? Resistive load. That's correct. Okay. Is there any other interaction from me here? Okay, so it says exit quiz. So when I click exit, it should take me to that third screen and show me my score. Okay. So here we are. The quiz result is shown. It says 21 marks. Perhaps to one of those interactions as well, we have assigned 1 point. So it has given me that point as well. But you do not attach marks to just interactions. You attach marks only to, say, quiz questions. In that case, it would have given 20 on 20 because it has assumed that I have taken 3 questions, right? There were only 2 questions. So you can save this file in the form of CPTX or export it as a zipped folder. And in any SCORM compliant LMS, one should be able to upload such a file and it will extract and take its form. All right, so that was a demo on VR-based assignment on Adobe Captivate. So like we discussed yesterday, the LMSs you need for uploading such e-learning authoring material or such assignments need to be SCORM compliant. So SCORM is a set of technical standards and many LMSs are compatible to this. We will not be able to do this on Google Classroom, but if you are using any other LMS or you want to do it through an internal server, we are trying to figure out how that can work. If you want to host this quiz and say, get the quiz scores reported on your own PC or some internal server at IIT Jodhpur, how to do that, we are trying to figure that out. So that was VR based. Next is this augmented reality lab interaction, or we can call it a lab assessment. I would rather call it a lab interaction because this is a tool which can be used simply to connect with a remote student with a physical, say, a physical lab. And the the scenario that we are talking about is, for example, you are situated in the lab and the student is situated remotely, but you want the say some equipment in the lab to be familiar with the student, right? And I mean, students should know which button to click when, what is this, what is that. So it is more like an identifying or telling you the steps of what should be done. Say, for example, if I want to plot a graph on an oscilloscope in my lab, how can the student tell me how to do that in a physical lab, right? While the student is joining remotely. So this is not a virtual platform. It is an augmented reality based platform, which will basically augment, say, markers or any kind of sort of input from the student on a real environment. Okay? So the platform that we use for this is TeamViewer Pilot, and the scenario is that instructor or the TA is present in lab and student is joining remotely. An objective is to do a knowledge check of the student on physical lab equipment by live annotations, and this can be followed by a Viva. Like, there's also a voice call option there, which you can enable, and you can ask questions, and there can be a voice call parallelly. So the platform is TeamViewer Pilot. TeamViewer Pilot is something which will be needed on the instructor's phone, and on the student's phone, you just need a regular TeamViewer. So TeamViewer Pilot is a special tool which has, I think, 2 weeks of or 1 week of trial version, which you can install, and the student just needs to install a regular TeamViewer, right? And it can be on phone or laptop. So what we'll do now is I'll show you a quick demo of how this works.
Hello, Dr. Rajlakshmi.
Hi, Minu.
Hello.
Hello, yes, we can hear you, Minu.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, like, do we have the this Adobe Captivate and TeamViewer and all that as a part of our institute softwares that are available for us?
No, not yet. So I have downloaded Captivate just for trial. It has a 30-day trial version, and then it needs to be purchased individually. I haven't explored whether there are institutional licenses or not for that.
I see. So are the departments supposed to arrange it themselves, or faculty members are supposed to arrange it by themselves?
So if somebody wants to use it, perhaps I would suggest that if you have an active user, they can do a trial first so that they familiarize themselves. And then if they really feel the need to purchase it, then perhaps it can be purchased by the department or the faculty member.
I see.
But I think from a faculty member, it would be better to buy from the department, I guess, but not instead of a one user.
That's quite useful, particularly when virtual labs, as far as virtual lab and quizzes are concerned.
Yes. The only thing is, if you want to connect this kind of a quiz, right, with an LMS, you want it to be graded. In that case, we need that internal server, and we need a separate hosting mechanism, which we haven't yet figured out, but we will soon. Because it will not go on Google Classroom. You can't host it on Google Classroom.
Okay.
Okay, so this is my phone screen, and this is how the TeamViewer Pilot would open up, right? And there should be, let the internet be connected. It is showing not ready yet. So as soon as the connection is ready, we would see a ID over here. And then I would request a volunteer, Preeti. I would request Preeti to then call me on this. So let me just connect it 1 second. Yes. So normally what would happen, you just need to open TeamViewer and connect, add this as the partner ID and dial. And what we'll do is we'll keep ourselves mute over there on the call. So we see an incoming connection, right? So this is Preeti, I guess.
Yes, this is me.
So I'm answering. Okay, I'm going to mute myself here. Right. Preeti, you can also mute yourself. Okay, so
yes.
Right. So now what everybody is seeing here is my table, right? And I've arranged a few items. And what this will do is it is creating a like a 360 grid in 3D where a person can make annotations. So if I ask Preeti now, Preeti, can you point to the blue car? Right. Can you point to the salt shaker? Can you, and if I move it around, you see that the markers stay in their place, right? So now can you point to the green plant, the one with the leaves, right? Can you draw a circle maybe around the rose plant, like the flower vase? Yes. Right. So all these annotations that you see, these marker that you see, they are being made by Preeti, who has joined this call just now live um, over TeamViewer. So she has installed TeamViewer, and on my side, I have the TeamViewer pilot. So you notice that there is also this uh, mute and unmute button. So if right now we are communicating over Meet, but we could have done this over this call also. So can you point to the hand sanitizer? Right. Right. So this tool basically just allows a remote user to add markers in the form of arrows and annotations on the screen. And the sequence in which you add these arrows, you get those numbers. So suppose you wanted the student to help you understand that, okay, if I want to plot such a graph using my oscilloscope, what is the first button you need to click? What is the second step? What is the third step? And that can be then reflected in the form of these arrows. You can also clear all annotations. Okay, so I'll stop the screen sharing right now and I'll show you a demo which we recorded in our lab. So here what has happened is the student has joined remotely and I'm in the lab and I'm asking the questions to the student and asking you identify where is the diode, where is this resistor, where is that component. And then in the next sequence, you'll see that I'm asking the student explain how we can plot the characteristics of some component on the oscilloscope. And then the student has to explain to me that, okay, you first go to the menu and then you then you press this button, then you use this button, then this is where on the screen you should look at, and this is the value, and that is what will happen next, right? So the first one is just identifying, and the second objective would be to explain the sequence. So that was one use case of how it can be used in a lab for a remote assessment or remote interaction. The name of the tool was TeamViewer Pilot. The next such tool, a knowledge check tool, which is similar to a game interface, is called Quizzes. Quizzziz, right? So this is, again, like I said, it is not gamification, but just hiding a test or a quiz or a knowledge check assessment questionnaire behind the veil of a game, right? So the interface is actually quite interesting, and it's fun. There is music, and you can insert memes, and what the students see at their end is just like a one bit of quiz contest, which would a scene will come, and then they can respond. Then there can be flashcards. There are different types of quiz questions which you can find out on this platform. You can just go to quizzes.com and you will see. I'm going to show you one demo which we recorded in class, what the teacher will see. Because as the quiz starts, so initially you can ask people to join in. You can create a quiz, don't have to really link it to a LMS, but that option is also there. You can connect it with Google Classroom. And you can get the scores there. But I'll come to why I would not recommend you doing that. But as a fun exercise, say end of a class, you want the students to be excited and you want them to answer a few questions, 4-5 questions, for instance. You can always use this to host a short quiz. So what you would do is you'll go to quizzes.com, create a short quiz, and there will be a link which will be generated. That link you can share in class at the end of the class. You can share it over chat. Students would be then asked to join. They'll just need to go to that link, join something, and I'll show you that link, and they can then just write a code, 6-digit code. They can log in with their names, and then you start the quiz, and the students will see on there, and the quiz will start. They can move ahead. So it is one question per screen. So the interface is really fun for students to use, and when you insert memes also in it, it becomes all the more funny. I'll come to why we would not recommend this as a serious tool for evaluation, but at the end of a class for knowledge check, this is a really great tool to engage students. They find it really interesting, and the teacher at their end can actually see the live leaderboard being updated. So here's the demo. So as the students are solving the quiz, we see a live leaderboard. So there are points here for every question carries 1,000 points, and there are 600 points are for correctness and 400 are for the speed. So this is how the tool would look like, and instantly they will get an idea of a leaderboard. However, the problem here is that the cheat codes of quizzes are available online. That means the student can always go to GitHub, find that code. They can keep it ready at their end, and the moment you start a quiz, they can just activate that script, and they will be able to see the answers on every question. So for a fun class exercise, this is fine, this is great, because it doesn't matter, right? Even if they cheated in a class exercise, how does it matter? But it's fun to use. But if you think of using it as a serious assessment tool, then there might be a problem, because although all students may not know this, but computer science students would definitely know how to get a cheat code. And once that is out, then it doesn't make sense. The next one is puzzle.org. So this is the tool on which I made the crossword puzzle yesterday and shared with you all. And this allows us to create crosswords or word searches, jigsaw puzzles, memory games. You can like fill in the blanks with some visual tools, reordering stuff, and labeling, simple quiz or a scramble. I don't know what an acrostic is, but you can make a sliding puzzle. Scavenger hunt, where in a scavenger hunt, you can have multiple stages, and the next stage will be unlocked only if you answered the previous stage, right? And a few other such, like, really, it's fun to solve these. The only problem is there is no integration of this with Google Classroom yet, but I can always, like, I can force registration, as in I can force the students to log to, when they're solving it, I can force that they register with some email ID. They have to enter their email ID at the time of playing, and then with that email ID I can do a mapping on my Google Classroom. So, but may not be with directly on Google Classroom. I can maintain a separate score sheet like that. All right, so these were some knowledge check tools, right? A VR-based tool and an AR-based tool, and 2 quizzes on with gaming interfaces. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll also turn on Q&A. Sorry, I forgot. So the next, if there are no questions, the next topic of discussion for today is using Google Forms to make quizzes and what kind of strategies you could use. So at this point, I'm assuming that you all already know how to create a Google Form quiz. If you are new to this, I would suggest please visit that video on our workshop webpage, where we explain from scratch how to create a quiz on Google Form, because it is not like a regular Google Form. You need to like enable certain features of a quiz, right? And then how you can integrate this with your Google Classroom, how you can import the scores from a Google Form back to your Google Classroom. Those things are explained in that video. So if you're new to that, please first visit that part of the video. Here, I just want to mention some strategies as to how we can minimize cheating if we use Google Form quizzes. So one thing is that making quizzes on Google Form are actually quite safe, like as opposed to quizzes, the previous gaming platform I showed you. Cheat codes are not available, at least as far as I could find. Google Forms are very safe way of conducting quizzes, Google Form quizzes, right? But why do we need, and what can we do? Exactly what happens, why do we need such a strategy, right? So one thing is that oftentimes students have these WhatsApp groups, and the moment you post a quiz, they will see that quiz, and one by, even if you have shuffled questions, for instance, Google Form also allows us to do that, to shuffle options as well as to shuffle the questions. But what happens is, if there is one set of question paper, students will they will have a WhatsApp group, and whoever solves that question first, they will just post the answer in that group. And then you will see that overall speaking, the average of your quiz will be very high, the class average, because actually it is very few people who are solving, and the moment they post it on a WhatsApp group, then it's all done. Nobody else needs to solve it. So one strategy to fight this is to create multiple sets of quizzes. You have identical options in these quizzes. These options, the questions are also similar looking, but they're actually different. Like, they're asking a different thing, but they look very similar. The second thing you can do is to name these forms with similar looking names, because on Google Classroom, you cannot have 2 assignments with the same name, or you cannot have 2 assignments with the same form, like form name. Means even on Google Forms, you cannot have 2 forms with the same name, right? So you can have similar looking names to throw them off. I'll show you how. Then the third strategy which many people have used in the last year is that if you were going to give, say, 45 minutes to solve a quiz in a physical mode, if they were sitting in class and solving, and you would have said, okay, you have 45 minutes to solve this, you can give significantly less time than that to do it in an online mode. So for example, if you give 45 minutes in a physical class, you can say it is just 30 minutes online. It is okay if nobody gets 100%, that is okay, because you are giving less time, right? You are accommodating for that already. So your expectation is not that somebody will get 100 on 100, but then it will give it, since you are giving less time, it is up to the student to decide which questions they can do, which questions are more scoring, and then they will have to focus on their work only. They will not, the more time you give in an online quiz, the more time there is to search online and to communicate on WhatsApp and get and to cheat essentially. The fourth thing is that the first thing when students get a question on Google Form, the first thing they would do is just copy the question, paste it in another browser and see if there is an answer ready-made available, right? So one thing which I often use to waste their time basically and not let them do this is to upload a question in image format. So you can't copy paste from an image directly, right? With a mouse, they'll have to manually type if they are searching for the answer. So it is going to be a waste of time, and they'll be like, let's leave it, let's solve it ourselves. Then changing this set assignment pattern, like in reference to the first point, right, where I'm suggesting that you make multiple sets of quizzes. When you assign them, you can change that pattern. As in, say you decided that I'm going to assign my first set. Don't name it set 1, set 2 like this. You name it in a way that they can't make it out. Like they should not know that they have been assigned set 1. And some students should not know that they have been assigned set 2, because then what will happen? They will write in their WhatsApp group, hey, who all have got set 2? They will make a small subgroup and say, okay, set 2 mein is question ka answer ye hai. Set 3 mein is question ka answer ye. So let's not let them know which set has been assigned. To do that, you have similar looking names. Like if it's a quiz on March 26th, I'm going to call it March 26 or 26 March. Like that, I'm going to change the name slightly. I know that they are different, but they may not immediately notice that it is different. Now, what I'm saying is when we make such groups, if we decided that, okay, I'm assigning set 1 to roll number 1, then roll number 4, then roll number 8, and so on. Like every fourth person is, sorry, roll number 1, roll number 5, and so on. So every fourth person is going to get set 1. Every fourth person is going to get set 2, like this. If this is what I have decided for one quiz, in the next quiz, I should change this. Maybe roll number 1 and roll number 2 will get set 1. Roll number 3 and 4 will get set 2, like this. So I'll change the pattern in which I'm assigning the assignment, because at the end of the first quiz, they will know, they will talk to each other and they will find out that, okay, we all got the same questions. You all got the same questions. So what is the pattern? They can figure it out. So you need to change that pattern the next time. So as an example, I'm showing you 2 Google Form quizzes. So one thing is that I have put the question. So the premise of this discussion is I'm assuming that these Google quizzes are open book, right? Open book and open Google rather. So you just post it on Google Form, and they have 20 minutes or 25 minutes to solve a 30 mark question or 20 mark question. So point being that we give them less time. You can give them more time in the sense of, if you extend the time and you say that, for till 20 minutes, if you submit this form, all is well. But from the 21st minute onwards, there is going to be a penalty. You're going to lose 1 mark. If you impose such a thing, then students who, for instance, had a connectivity issue, that they lost connection in between, or they lost internet, or they lost power in between, they still have a chance. Like they will not get 0 eventually, but then they will have to pay something for that. Like they will lose some marks, but they can still submit. Means you don't stop receiving the responses immediately, but you can offer a penalty. But giving less time would be very, very useful. Students will be focused. They will focus on their work and they will solve what they can. Now, if you look at these 2 questions, they are very similar. In fact, they are similar questions. If you look at the options are identical. But I've changed one very minor thing. In one set, I said for 1.5 MCD, and the other one I'm asking for 2 MCD. So these 4 options, one correct option corresponds to 1.5, and one option corresponds to 2 MCD. And like this, I have 2 more sets of questions to whom these other 2 answers may be corresponding. right? So options are identical. Questions look very similar, but they are actually different questions. So if there was somebody who was cheating and one person got the answer as 136 ohm and everybody else marks 136 ohm, it is only that set 1 is going to get it right. All others are going to get it wrong. And in fact, in such cases, you can also very clearly identify those people who marked the obviously wrong answer. And you'll find out that, okay, this student obviously did not read their own question, because that is not what is even asked. They have marked some other answer. And you can identify who all very actively cheat and don't want to read questions. You'll also notice that the names of the quiz I've kept is, one is March 26th, and the other one is March-26. Again, this is just for my reference, because I cannot have two forms with the same name, and I cannot even have two assignments with the same name. Now, what I plan to do is, like this, there would be 4 such sets, for instance, right? And I will assign one set to a set of students on Classroom, this to another set of students in Classroom, and so on. Now, how to make those sets? Google Classroom currently does not allow us to make subgroups or sections, right? And we also actually don't want the students to know which set is being assigned to them. So that's a good thing in a way. This is another type of question where, so here what I showed, this is a very minor thing. So this is just one type of difference you can take. You can actually change the question altogether. Say, for instance, many concepts that we learn, they have multiple facets to it, right? So for example, if I'm asking somebody, one set is having a question of high pass filter, I can ask this, if I'm asking, say, response of a high pass filter to this signal, I can ask for another set response to a low pass filter for this signal, right? In the options, I can still have the same things, I can have them identical, but people who don't solve their own questions will get it wrong, obviously. This is another question type where you can have images as options. So on the face of it, these two look absolutely identical. Options are already identical. I have cropped this image so you can't see options C and D. They are also images. They're also waveforms. But question looks the same. Question is the instruction is identical. You need to find the output voltage for the following circuit. But if you look closely, here the battery has positive side towards up, and here the battery has negative side towards up. Options are identical. People who don't solve their own question or look at their own circuit rather than in a WhatsApp group or a messenger, they will get this wrong. And like this, again, these are just 2 such sets. You can have 2 more sets or 3 more sets. Normally, another suggestion here would be that, say, in Google Forms, there is this option under presentation settings. You can shuffle the question order, right? You can shuffle the question order. But if you have name and roll number also inserted, then name will appear somewhere else, roll number will appear somewhere else, right? Because the order has been shuffled. For such cases, what you can do is you can insert name and roll number as a separate section. So after name and roll number field, you can just add a section and have the rest of the quiz in that section. So normally when question order is shuffled, it is shuffled within a section, right? So if name and roll number order is shuffled, that's okay with us. If you have linked questions, that means if you have one question and then say one question and there are 2 more questions associated with the answer that you get from that previous question, then you would want to either you can disable the question shuffling option, or if you still want that no question shuffling should be on, then those related questions can be put in one section, right? And this can be announced to the student in advance that there will be one section which has related questions. So say I'm giving one figure in that question, but when the quiz is floated, at that time the order would be shuffled. So maybe the question, the statement where the figure featured, that is actually coming later and some other question is coming earlier. So student needs to be prepared that, okay, in this section all these questions are interrelated. So I need to find out ki pehle wala question kaun sa tha and then where should I go, right? And how do you assign it? So this is the first one, the March 26 quiz. I'll create an assignment with the name so that I don't get confused. This is the same name as the quiz name. And then I will go to students And instead of all students being checked, I will uncheck that, and then I will select every fourth student or every third student, whichever pattern I have decided. And how do we decide this? We can simply have an Excel sheet where you already have the names and roll numbers of everybody from Aryabhatta, right? And then you decide that, okay, I'm following ABC, ABC, ABC. Like I have 3 sets, A, B, and C. ABC, I'll just go on writing ABC. And then you sort it, all A's are together, all B's are together, all C's are together. So then you create one assignment for A's, one assignment for B's, one assignment for C's. And then, like say, this is all set C, right now what you see on the screen. And once this is done, you can save it, and you can schedule it, or you can assign it. So I tried scheduling once, but the problem is that since I will have 4 such sets of questions, right? 4 such question papers. What I noticed earlier on Google Classroom was that when I scheduled something like a quiz at 10 a.m., I scheduled 2 simultaneous assignments at 10 a.m. One got posted at 10 a.m., but the other one got posted at 10:02, which is like 2 minutes delay is a huge delay in an online test, extremely huge delay. So I would not suggest that, at least in quizzes, you don't schedule them. It is better you keep them saved. And exactly like if you have the quiz at 10 o'clock, at 9:59, you assign them at the same time. You assign them together. It will take just a few seconds. But to rely on Google Classroom to post it exactly at the same time is a little risky, right? And then there could be 3 or multiple such quizzes. This really throws students off. And then like maybe in the first time they will all cheat, and then they will get very low marks. But by the next time, they would have learned a lesson, and then they'll be like, if I want to score, it is better I focus on my part and do my question instead of looking for answers in a WhatsApp group. It is also, when you keep on changing the assessment pattern, it is also difficult for students to keep a track of who might have got the same question paper, right? That also is difficult. So the strategy here is to make it difficult for students to find out from each other the answers, and by making it as a question type in image, making it even difficult for them to search it online. And given the less amount of time you will give and large number of questions, student has to take a call on what they want to do, right? And mostly, like by the first or the second attempt, they would have decided that, let me solve my own quiz. So these are just some suggestions regarding forms on Google Quiz. If you have any questions, please post them online. The next suggestion was regarding exams on Google Meet, right? So if you're conducting lab evaluation on Google Meet, or say some quiz where it is not on Google Form, but you post a question paper on Google Classroom, and student has to manually write that test on a paper, and they need to upload it, right? So there again, the same kind of thing happens, is that even if you keep it proctored, in the sense you ask the student to keep the webcam on, what will happen is you cannot see the entire workspace, right? You cannot see the entire workspace, and the phone can be kept anywhere on their workspace. The webcam cannot cover that entire space. They can easily chat with each other. They can easily search for answers online. It is extremely easy for students to do this, right? So what are the possible steps we can take in this regard is to ask students to share their screen along with another camera input. So for, like I said yesterday, in one Google Meet, you can have, like, it would be better to have only 10 persons instead of say 15 or more people in a Google Meet, including the proctor. So you have 9 students rather in one room, and you ask the students to join via the laptop and via another phone. Anyway, in many of the quizzes or exams, we say that joining by laptop is mandatory, right? You cannot appear in the quiz from phone. So if they can arrange, almost all of them have a cell phone, a smartphone at home. Like based on the survey that we've taken in, like at least I've taken in first year students, 100% of them have access to smartphones. So if they can join via laptop and mobile, you can ask them to keep screen sharing on, not just one tab, but the entire screen. That means you can see their taskbar and the time and everything. You're seeing the entire screen, not just one tab. They cannot open anything else on it, especially if you are trying for a handwritten exam. So I'll show you one demo of how that works. This was one, it was a repeat exam that we took for 2 students. So you notice here that one student has joined from phone. I can see his entire workspace. This is his camera webcam, and on his laptop, this is the webcam from his laptop. He has also shared his screen, right? So for each student, I can see the full screen, I can see the webcam input, and I can see the workspace. So what I asked them to do is align your second device in such a way so that I can see your workspace clearly. And there at least one device is not on mute. So even if they try to, if somebody else comes in, or if they're trying to access another device or trying to make a voice call, for example, all the audio input is also going to come to the proctor. If it is noisy, you can ask them to turn it off. But so you notice here that for one student, there are 3 tiles, right? So if there are 9 students, you would have 27 tiles in all. And if you add in multiple proctors and say assign people, you watch, like a TA could watch 10 students, the other TA could watch other 10 students, you would watch a few of them, it would be easier to monitor. This will work, however, only if you were looking at a written exam, right? Because if the screen sharing is on, you cannot ask the student to solve a Google form quiz here, right? Because then everybody else can see their answer. So this will work only if it's an offline handwritten kind of an exam and you want to make it proctored. One more thing we can keep in mind here is when we are recording an exam, normally what will happen if we record anything on Google Meet, if we start recording on Google Meet, the recording type by default, the layout in the recording will be active speaker, meaning a speaker, and if there is any screen being shared, that is how it will record. Means it will record a meeting in speaker view. Google Meet will not record a meeting in grid view. But if we want such an option where we can watch everybody at the same time in grid view, rather than doing a Meet recording, it would probably be more helpful to do a screen recording. You put everybody in grid view and then you do a screen recording along with the audio. So system audio is also being recorded at the same time, because Google Meet will not allow you to do grid view recording. And the screen will, like, it will be focused on one person. Say there was noise coming from somebody, a little bit of sound, that person became the active speaker, and then the entire recording would feature only that one student. So then it will not be of any help later on if you want to revisit and you want to see, say if a proctor reports that I felt that so-and-so student was trying to contact somebody, or they disappeared in between, or they did this or did that. You can't revisit that in the recording because they may not be in the speaker view. So these are just a few suggestions. So Dr. Pathak, for recording in grid view, in Google Meet, there is no such setting, meaning if you can bring the layout to grid view, of course, but to record it, you cannot do anything in Google Meet because by default, it will record in speaker view only. To do that, instead of doing recording on Meet, I'm saying that you could do it via a screen recorder. Rather than recording the meeting directly in Google Meet, you could simply turn on a screen recorder and record everything in grid view. For your own reference, like the proctor could do it and then later share it with the instructor. All right, so these were just some suggestions regarding assessment and knowledge check tools over Google Form and Google Meet. So we'll talk about the hybrid classroom setup. We've done a little bit of experiment with the existing infrastructure in lecture hall building. And we've set up one sample, means it is not a permanent sample, just to do a trial. We did this in one of the classrooms in lecture hall building in 308, right? So as Professor Chaudhary was mentioning yesterday, the coming semester may have some element of hybrid classrooms, right? And by hybrid, we mean that some students would be present in class in person, and the rest of the students will be joining remotely. So in such a case, what all features or what all tools would you use or can you use to have a seamless interaction between the class audience and the remote audience? If they ask questions, what you can do, how you can do the connections, just a few examples like this. There would be more. This is just a very simple example of that. This is not the final hybrid classroom setup. This is still a work in progress. And as we have more updates, you will be informed, right? So just wanted to share a few example with you. So say we are looking right now at one such setup where this is room 308. It's a large classroom, right? So there is a huge projector. So every classroom already has a projector and an audio system. And it's very good quality audio system and very good quality projector. See, suppose this is the 308 or 110 where there is a stage and you have a instructor's desk, or it may be a dais. What all things you need here is, firstly you need your own laptop. So by own laptop, I mean there is a laptop which is needed. You can have an external monitor. Like yesterday we were talking, if we are using a pen tablet and not a pen display for writing, for digital board work, then an external monitor would be helpful, right? If it is not a pen tablet but a pen display, you already can see everything you are writing on the tablet. In that case, you don't need this external monitor. If you also want to use a document camera, that is also there on your table. So on your table, you have a document camera, a pen tablet or a pen display, a laptop, and a small second screen for your own reference, right? Then for the remote students, you have another camera setup, say on a tripod. This camera is for, if you are standing or sitting somewhere here, the camera is focusing you. If you are walking around on the dais, the camera can follow you. This can be either like a motion tracking camera, or you can just assign your TA to do that. The TA will have another device. The TA has logged in from, like, the TA can log into your Google Meet or WebEx as TA of your course, and that camera input is actually showing you. Okay, it is facing you. So this is broadly the kind of setup. In a small classroom, the only difference would be that this camera would be placed at the back of the classroom instead of in the front, because it's a small space. How would this work? Say, this is how the document camera would look like. You would have your paper in which you want to write something. This is just a USB hub where I've connected, say, my mouse dongle. This is coming from the document camera. This is coming from the actual DSLR camera, which is placed at a distance on a tripod. This is coming from the projector or the second screen. Right? So the third scene is what you see as a sample setup. Right now, this is showing a graphics tablet. This is showing a pen display. Right? This is the remote of the document camera with which you can zoom in or zoom out. And this is the typical mic that we have in lecture hall building. So we'll take a few scenarios. So the first scenario is that the instructor wants to use document camera. Okay, you don't want to use the pen tablet. It's a large classroom. You don't want to use the blackboard either. And a document camera is a very good alternative to a blackboard, right? Because you just need to write on a piece of paper instead of a blackboard. So how can this setup be done in that case? What all we have on our desk? We have a second monitor, we have a pen tablet, we have a laptop, and a document camera, right? 4 things. So the Meet window can be put on the extended monitor. The document camera actually comes with its own app. So you can simply install that app on the laptop, open that app up, and that screen, that application can simply be shared on Google Meet. Like how I'm sharing a tab right now, you can share that app screen, the document camera app. And for the in-class audience, the laptop will be mirrored onto the projector. So say people in the audience are seeing this screen, right? This is the document camera app screen. This was actually on the laptop. And the people joining on Meet can see this. Okay, this is me, by the way. Right? So this is the app screen, and say student can switch. Student can pin that window onto their window, or they can pin the instructor window down, like unpin or pin any window they want, any tile they want. Right? So both are visible. This camera feed should be coming from the TA user. This is one scenario when instructor wanted to use the document camera. Second scenario is that instructor uses the pen display, right? In such a case, the second display is not needed. That external monitor is not needed. The Meet window can simply be on the laptop. And if you've ever used a second monitor, or if you've ever used a pen display, you will know that when the connection is made, you can simply click and drag and bring. You can bring windows from one screen to another screen, right? So what we would suggest is that onto your pen display, you click and drag and bring all the lecture related windows onto your pen display. Meaning if you had a PPT, you had a PDF annotator, whiteboard, anything, you just click and bring all those windows onto your pen display, so that your pen display is dedicated to your lecture, right? And anything external, anything secondary, like your Meet window, which you don't need to look at continuously, which you just need to look at when somebody is asking a question remotely, that can be on the laptop. Right? And now what we can do is, in the lecture in your classroom, it is the pen display screen which can be mirrored onto the projector. So the in-class audience can see what you are writing, and the same thing can also be shared on the Meet. So the remote audience is also seeing it, and student can actually pin any window or view just the shared screen, or just the instructor, by changing the layout, say Spotlight layout. Right? So this is the kind of setup I'm talking about. This is the pen display, and this is the laptop on which the Meet window is there. The third scenario is that, it's the same scenario. This is what the lecture hall people are seeing. So because I'm using a pen display, I'm showing a PDF annotator screen. So this is what is on the screen of the lecture hall, and this is what is happening in the Meet window. So we have Ankita and Shyam who have joined as remote users, and the screen is shared, and whatever the instructor is writing, they can see, right? And the same thing is also going to be seen on lecture hall. Scenario 3. There's a question over Google Meet, and the student now needs to answer. So what would we want? We would want that if, say, some student is asking question over Meet, they unmuted themselves and asked question, the whole class should be able to hear that question, right? So in that case, we need to connect the laptop through the 3.5 mm aux cable with the lecture hall audio. And the instructor, the instructor is already, if you look at the first setup, the instructor in class will be looking at the students in class and teaching, right? They would not be looking at the laptop or anything. They would be looking directly, making eye contact with the students in class. And we've kept the DSLR camera on a tripod in the middle of this view. So in between, of course, they may look at the camera as well as they're looking around in the class. But when somebody is asking a question over Google Meet, they would not want to look at that screen, right? Because they would want to look at the laptop. So in that case, the instructor can simply turn on the webcam on the laptop where the student is situated and respond. So example like this. So I've turned on my webcam. If there is a question and I'm responding, just for that question, I'm looking at the webcam and responding. For everything else throughout the session, the instructor would be looking to the front camera. Front camera as in the main camera, the DSLR, which is kept in the center of the class. Another scenario, instructor wants to use a blackboard or walk around in the room, right? So you can have a motion tracking camera, or you can simply assign your TA to follow that instructor. And TA should also know where to zoom, where to pan. Right? So this kind of a sort of a training or orientation for the TAs would also be needed. And Last scenario, instead of a pen display, instructor uses a pen tablet. So there you can use laptop as the primary lecture screen, like I showed yesterday in the beginning of the first session. Meet window, you need an extended monitor in this case. Meet window is on the extended screen. Laptop screen is shared over Meet, and laptop screen is also what is shown on the projector for the in-class audience. And in a small classroom, the camera can be placed at the end of the class. And you don't need a big tripod also. You can use a mini tripod. Here are some of the requirements. So we are still working out these requirements, and the scenarios of connection and mirroring and all these things, this will be known to the LHP staff, so you don't have to worry about it. But we are showing this here just so that you have some idea of how the switching would work, what will be mirrored where, right? What are some options which would be available to you? In an ideal case, in a hybrid classroom, we should have a 2-camera system, one that focuses on the student and one that focuses on the instructor and is motion enabled. So those things are being worked out, and in near future, we will have some more updates for you regarding that. But in case you want to immediately use this in the coming semester, this is just some example. So blended and hybrid, Dr. Pathak, are terms which are often interchangeably used. But broadly speaking, blended would mean having aspects of synchronous and asynchronous teaching at the same time, right? As in, say, when we say flipped classroom is one type of blended teaching model, where some things are taught online, live, and some things are taught offline through asynchronous sharing of material. That is blended. When we say hybrid classroom, we are saying that in a live session, some people are present in person and some people are joining remotely, right? So this is basically the difference between when we say blended teaching and hybrid teaching. But sometimes, very commonly, these terms are interchangeably used, right? So which is why I'm calling this classroom as a hybrid classroom, because some students will be present in person and some will be joining remotely. All right, if you have any questions or any thoughts or any suggestions, please let us know. All right, so if there are no questions at this point, thank you all so much. This is the end of the session. I'm going to invite Dr. Somnath Ghosh in just a little while. Just wanted to share some more information with you. All the recordings will be shared on topic wise. We're going to break it topic wise and time index it and share it on the workshop webpage. The scope of this, like the objective of this workshop, has been simply to make suggestions on how you can particularly focus on engaging students, or because you are already taking a lot of efforts, if you would like to try out some tools which can enhance that engagement and make things easier for you yourself, that is what was the objective of this workshop. I understand that in some portions may have gone too fast because we haven't touched on the basic or the fundamental of that aspect, because that has already been covered in the last workshop. So I would again request you that if you are just starting with Google Meet or just starting off with Google Classroom or Google Form, please visit those videos on the workshop webpage to understand how for example, Edpuzzle, you're just starting off with interactive video lectures, please visit those videos to know how to get started. And then when you revisit the recording of this workshop, probably things would make a little more sense. And if you need any help, any kind of suggestion, you're stuck anywhere or just need any kind of help from us, the members of the coordination committee for online education are right here. And also the members of the education technology vertical are right here. The members of the EdTech vertical are myself, Dr. Ankita Sharma, Dr. Preeti Tiwari, and Dr. Nitin Bhatia. And the coordination committee for online education, the members are Associate Dean Academics PG, Dr. Somnath Ghosh, Associate Dean Academics UG, Dr. Suril Shah, Dr. Nitin Bhatia is there, Dr. Deepak Arora, Dr. Suman Kundu, myself, and the chairman of this committee is the director, Professor Shantanu Chaudhary. So if you need any help, we are right here. Please reach out and let us know. with that, I will invite Dr. Somnath Ghosh for taking feedback from you and for delivering a vote of thanks.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
If you have any suggestions also regarding how we can improve this, please let us know. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rajlakshmi. And thanks all the faculty members who have joined for these sessions. And before we start the feedback on the both the sessions or both the days, let me thank the Coordination Committee of Online Education and the EdTech verticals who have been part and organizer, being the organizer of the workshop. And this is a much needed initiative, as you know, that we are starting the semester and we are planning to have it in hybrid mode. And also special thanks to all the speakers who have been actually interacting with you and giving all the possible solution or suggestion for your online classes, synchronous, asynchronous, as well as hybrid. And I especially thank Dr. Rajlakshmi for our overall coordination of this entire workshop. The sessions were really informative and interactive, as already many of the faculty members appreciated, and many of the question answers and discussion have been taken place during this all the sessions. And there are excellent presentations, question answer sessions, and discussion sessions over the last 2 days. And we have learned various aspects of synchronous, asynchronous learning, flipped classroom, and hybrid classroom. And we believe that all these sessions, suggestions, and the discussion what we had during these 2 days would definitely help you for the coming session for your classes, especially those who will be taking these hybrid classes. Now I request all the faculty members, if you have any specific feedback or suggestion for any of these sessions or anything related to this hybrid classrooms in particular. So we would be glad to hear, and if possible, we should take care of those before the semester starts. So please suggest if you have any feedback or any request or any suggestion, anything.
Okay, if you would like to give your suggestions or feedback offline, I'm sharing a form link with you. You can always share your feedback regarding this workshop or any other topics you felt like should have been added, or there are something that you've explored and you would like to share with the rest of the faculty community. Please let us know on this form as well. And please visit the website to get all the resources we have used or shared in this workshop today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Oh, we have one question from Dr. Pathak. Assessment strategy. So,
Yes. Yeah, please. Should I?
So in terms of assessment, yes, Dr. Ghosh, please go ahead.
Yeah. So assessment strategy, as I think all of you are aware of that, we have taken certain decision in the ECS, and decision has been communicated to all the faculty members that if you are taking hybrid classroom, those will be present in physical mode in the classes. So you must schedule some of the continuous component for them, and the weightage of those components can be slightly higher, but instructor can take a call, because that assessment will be in a combined mode. Those who are online and offline both will be part of the assessment, but assessment taken by the student in physical mode can have higher weightage. So it has been mentioned clearly. So if you have further queries, please write to us so that we can also, yes.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you so much for spending your Sunday morning with us.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.